now I'd like to finish with introducing, very happy to have Max Hyde, who's the president of the NET, who'd like to finish up our conference. I'd like to welcome him.
It's a great honour to be here. I was very, very pleased to be asked to come along to it. I'm sorry I wasn't here all day, but I had to get from Hartlepool, where I started today, off to here, so I apologise for coming late. But it's clearly been a really useful day. It's been useful in terms of therapy, just being able to talk about things that aren't being talked about. And if you want a quote from a professor in California called Art Costa that encapsulates what's happening in schools and what's happening because of the global educational reform movement that you heard Richard refer to, this is a really useful quote that encapsulates it. And all of these quotes and things I'll send to Hackney so you can have them, there's no problem. And he says, what was educationally significant and hard to measure has been replaced by what is educationally insignificant but easy to measure. So now we measure how well we taught what isn't worth learning. And, you know, because it's happening in the States, it's happening all over the place. And the things that are really important are being crowded out of the curriculum. Of course, academic subjects are important, but so is, we argue, sex and relationships education. And we mean education as well. We don't mean telling the kids. We mean setting up a safe space where people can discuss. And it's really important that young people's questions should be answered. And they should feel safe to ask those questions. Some dreadful things have been happening in education, and we've been trying to fight them. And one of my favourite badges ever, which I wear on my lanyard, my NUT lanyard, is don't get angry, get active. Do something about it. Even if it's a little thing, it will make a difference. And lots of little things together can make a massive difference. So anything you can do following this conference will make a difference. And I want you to know that. You know now that there are lots of materials. There are free materials. We don't need to give even more evidence. There are shed loads of evidence that sex and relationships education is needed. What we want to do now is to make sure that it happens, and it happens in all our schools, primary, secondary, post-16, because this is education for life. You know, no question about it. And what sort of things can we do? Because I'm proud to be president of a really strong campaigning union. So how can we campaign about it, other than making people look like victims? Well, you hear a lot about league tables, but here's one league table that I bet you've not heard about. In the PISA tests, there are some really shameful things, or shameful scores, that happen in schools in England and Wales. So if I quote UNICEF, okay, UNICEF in 2011, compared with 20 other OECD 2 countries, so the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, including substantially poorer countries such as Poland and Greece, the UK came bottom on 3 out of 6 dimensions of well-being and came bottom overall in the league table. And it's not just in that, there are many other league tables of that sort where we come bottom because we are concentrating on things that are not fundamentally important to children. And that is something that we should go out and we should say. We want sex and relationships education because our children deserve it. Their well-being is tremendously important to us. And I'll quote Nelson Mandela, late great and honorary NUT member. He says, and he's right, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children and young people. So these are things that we can talk to parents about. These are things that we can talk to governors about. And we can then lobby for proper education for our children. They deserve sex and relationships in education. I've taught all my life in Warwickshire. Warwickshire has relationships education because apparently there's no sex in Warwickshire. Yeah. because people were worried about it. And we want to empower teachers with proper training. Well, you've met some of the wonderful organisations that exist and the inspirational work that they do. And wouldn't it be great if instead of sitting in yet another room, looking at the latest government wheeze in the curriculum and death by PowerPoint, if teachers had proper education on these things, so they feel confident.
Staff leaves the building now. Can all staff?
Was it something I said, do you think? Okay, we know that teachers often have had no education whatsoever in how to educate young people on sex and relationships education. So they need proper high quality training. So we keep on pushing for that. And if we don't do it, not only will we have children who are damaged and are don't feel they belong in the school in which they're being taught. We want it to be a place of belonging. But also, if we allow and don't challenge objectification of women, oppression of other groups, then that continues into the workplace. And I did not think in my lifetime that I would see the gender pay gap opening up again, because it is. I didn't think that I would see the figure that 1 in 4 women are in low pay. That even if they've got a degree or more than a degree, they're in low paid jobs. I really didn't want to see the continuation of valuable work, often done by women, such as caring responsibilities, actually continually falling behind the living wage. So these are things to fight for now for our young people. It's about rights for all of us and a better world for all of us. So anything you can do will help us realise that. So thank you for coming and thank you for inviting me.